Now, wintertime comes around. Obviously, we all getting ready, trying to stay warm. But did you ever think, like, dang, is my food gonna be okay during the winter? Like how am I gonna keep it safe, right? Like, it's wintertime. Like, it looked like it looked like a winter wonderland outside. How am I going? Nobody's asking these questions, okay? Nobody, okay? Because at least you got cabinets, refrigerator, countertop, your bedroom with all the water bottles in it. You got somewhere to keep your food when times get rough. That's not to say the same for these other animals, okay? So nature had to find a way to be like, hey, times is rough. I gotta store food somehow, okay? I can't just be out here struggling. So today we're gonna talk about animals who obviously found ways to survive in the wintertime but still have enough food to last that whole time. Today we are talking about hoarding. Now we ain't talking about this hoarder, okay? Because this is crazy. How much shit is in this house is ridiculous, okay? We gonna talk about this another time though. Like, I don't even know how these people, like, how do you even move around at that point? Like, it's just diabolical. Another video, okay, another video. But yeah, if we go back to our winter wonderland, besides sledding, you know what I mean? Ice skating, I mean, slipping on ice. Other animals are out here being active as well. And as you probably can tell, all the luscious trees and flowers and shit you were seeing during the spring and summertime, they dead. They all dead. Okay. So that's normal folks. We'll look at that and be like, ain't nothing to eat out here. The geese leave, the bugs are somewhere. So everything probably just leaves. That is not true actually. A good chunk of animals still stick around. They have to find some way to survive this whole time. Where hoarding comes in. Or caching. I'll probably go like back and forth between the words. It is what it is. But yeah, hoarding basically is just storing food for the future, basically. See, storing food knowing that uh things like food at a certain point, food will be very scarce. So that animal realizing that, they prepare ahead of time. So they store food obviously somewhere, stash a good amount of it, or put a good body weight on as well, so they can have like fat restorers and shit they can feed off of. Now, hoard is obviously used in times where food is super scarce. If you have food that was saved ahead of time, all you have to do is go back and find your cash, and now you got food. So obviously, animals realizing this, many species spend basically a crazy amount of time hiding like thousands of just nuts and seeds and all types of shit. It's crazy. Mostly birds and rodents do this. Um, it's not always wintertime or like when things are scarce, like because of the weather. Take for instance the leopard, right? Um, these are predators. They're not gathering nuts and shit, but they obviously still use the same behaviors that we're talking about today. Take here this unfortunate antelope hanging from the tree looking like a Christmas ornament. Okay, why is this antelope hanging like that? You know what I mean, like a Christmas ornament? Because leopards can celebrate Christmas too. Okay, but besides that, because they want to. Okay, the fact that they like, I'm gonna get to why they do it, but like, do you know how heavy an antelope is? And the fact that they carry that shit with their mouth up a tree is crazy. But obviously, out there where leopards live, leopards aren't the only thing that's trying to murder antelopes. Okay, so other predators, obviously will still prey. Other leopards will still prey. So hiding your catch somewhere where other things can get it, and you're able to go get it in a later date, obviously provides a lot of benefits for the leopard, so it doesn't get its shit eaten. Another animal that we'll find in South America, which, you know what I mean, a disclaimer, brother love plantains, okay? So when I learned about these animals, you know I was excited. Okay? But like I said, out there in South America, you can find them in Central all the way down to like Argentina. In the weasel family, you have the arboreal tyra. Now these guys are omnivores. They eat a number of different things. But the thing that made me intrigued was them stealing plantains. Okay. Now stealing is not okay, guys. But stealing plantains are, okay? We can steal plantains and then bring them to me. If you steal plantains to bring them for me, that's basically not stealing. So what these guys will do is they'll go to a farm or wherever, steal them, and they take them to a place where they're able to ripe. So after ripen, they'll go back to them and then finally eat them. So obviously, caching isn't just focused on storing food for a later date. It's also plays a role in obviously preparing the food and making it ripe enough for the animal to eat. Because a lot of times, squirrels and birds, and especially squirrels like rodents, they'll get food that is not ready to eat at the time that it's taken, but in a later date, then it is able to eat. Um, Obviously, depending on the size of the item, that plays a factor in like where they're gonna cache it, if they're gonna cache it. Obviously, some things they just eat. Other things they're like, hey, if it's easy to carry, maybe they'll just sit there and go cache it somewhere. Well, let's get back to caching for just like winter purposes. We can talk about squirrels, okay? I hate squirrels, okay? That should be a very known thing on this channel, okay? I generally, we're not even gonna get into the reason because it's too much trauma there, okay? We'll talk about it another. I don't like squirrels, okay? Flying squirrels may be, okay? I might be a little racist to gray squirrels because that's what I live by, but they traumatize me. They traumatize the shit out of me. But squirrels, obviously, being those who cache, they don't hibernate during the wintertime, so they still running around, unfortunately. So obviously, they have to find ways of having enough food during that time as well. Funny story. Funny story. Not a long story, but my grandma just, you know what I mean, being a grandma in the house, and she was just noticing like peanuts and almonds and shit on the floor, right? But usually on the floor next to the couch. So she thinking, I'm just an old clumsy grandma. I just drop some nuts or something, you know what I mean? Pause. I feel like I'm gonna have to say pause this whole story. Her just keep noticing like every few days it was like weirdly like it was a walnut that came out of nowhere. You know she ain't eating on no walnuts. I hope she not up there. I hope she ain't up there stealing walnuts. There was all types of shit in there. Soon to find out, inside of the couch was about like 20 just variety of nuts. Okay, like somebody just opened a variety pack and just poured it underneath the couch, bro. Okay, nuts everywhere. So basically, her couch became a cache for some random gray squirrel that somehow was sneaking in her house and using her couch as a nut holder. Okay, pause again. Okay, the couch became Nut Express. Okay, it was nothing but nuts. Okay, it was getting nuts. Okay, how many nuts was in there? It was getting diabolical. A lot of y'all are probably laughing because y'all probably had similar experiences. If you got a crack in your old beat up car that's outside that y'all ain't used, they'll use that. They'll sneak in the garage. They'll go anywhere. Wherever they can put nuts, they gonna put the nuts. Okay. I'll talk about three different squirrels because they each have a different caching behavior, or like the way they cache basically. First, the gray squirrel, demons. Okay, gray squirrels scatter hoard. So basically, what they'll do is instead of putting things in one location, they'll get a nut, a seed, whatever, and they'll just kind of like randomly put them in separate locations. So gray squirrels can hide up to almost 3,000 to almost 10,000 amount of seeds and nuts. It's ridiculous, bro. Like next time you go in the woods, you need to realize how many nuts you walking on. Okay, like you stepping all up on nuts, man. You stepping on a nut here, you stepping on the seed there. It is so many amount of food that they hide. It's actually kind of crazy. Using spatial memory, also using scent. That's how these squirrels will find their caches. Um, Spatial memory obviously being like, hey, I put my seed next to that, you know what I mean, that creek next to that rock, you know what I mean, something like that. Basically, the way I get around the city, they're like, hey, oh, you talking about that place next to that McDonald's over there? That's what you mean, right? The funniest thing about squirrels is they slow. They slow as hell. Okay, squirrels have good memories, and like I said, they use spatial memory to remember things, but they do forget a lot of seeds. Okay, so you would think this is bad for the squirrels. They are right. They're fine. Okay, they got plenty of other seeds and shit they can find, or they can just go steal. The squirrels will just go steal somebody else's seeds. You know what I mean? It's that many around where obviously another squirrel probably put seeds right next to yours. You know what I mean? Most of the time, they actually find their own cache, but obviously, it's not uncommon to see squirrels steal other squirrels' stuff. And obviously, we seen squirrels chasing each other around. But for the seeds that they don't remember or they don't find, that actually allows that seed to germinate and then turn into actually allow it to grow. So squirrels actually help seed dispersal in the forest actually a lot. So them being slow actually, you know what I mean, actually benefits them. I mean benefits the plants. Let me say that. But yeah, allowing germination to happen and spreading the seeds around the forest allows that plant to obviously have a better chance of surviving. And then spreading off new offspring, spreading off new offspring. But next, let's go to the red squirrel. Okay, red squirrels are different because they're red. Besides them being red, they love pine cones. Love them. They love conifers. They're great cousins. They decide to do things in a different manner. So that's why I thought squirrels actually be a cool species to talk about because they do kind of like touch each of the hoarding behaviors. In this case, instead of having multiple caches that you have all over the place in your territory, instead now you have just one huge big cache. Usually in a place with low oxygen, which allows the will allow like the pine cones and shit that they collect, allows them to stay fresh for a very long time. And these, usually called medians, they last for a very long time actually. And like I said, they can have almost 50 pounds of food in there. It's insane. Now, red squirrels still will like hide things in like tree crevices and stuff like that. But why do that when you got this big ass pile of food that you can last the whole winter with, but next winter too. Different from the gray squirrels because they have just basically one location where they keep all of their stored food. They more aggressive when it come to defending it. So gray squirrels, they'll still, you know what I mean, put hands on you if you get next to their cache. But for the most part, obviously, they're not defending each cache that heavily. So red squirrels are way more territorial when it comes to their medians. So you will see them defending it, barking off. Like even if people walk by, you can hear them barking. because they can get raided by other squirrels. Bears raid them a lot of times. So in their cases, they have to be a little more defensive when it comes to caching. Um, and that could be kind of like the downside of it too, because like if it get found, a lot of your food is taken away, which is like if a gray squirrel cache is found, it only found one of a bunch of caches. Where in the red squirrel sense, everything is gone. We got to talk about Alvin and his friends, the chipmunks. The chipmunks live in burrows, and they're a little more sophisticated than our red and gray squirrels. Obviously, in the burrows, they have different tunnel systems that lead to different, place where they sleep. Shit, another entrance to get out, another one to, come in. Whoop de doo, right? But in there, they have caches where they are store food, so they might have one or two caches inside of their tunnel system. Um, and during the winter time, like I said, squirrels don't hibernate, but chipmunks basically do hibernate. They go into torpor, which is basically like a shorter hibernation. Um, Home metabolism just comes down. Um, Heart rate, everything like that, brain activity just becomes a complete slow. But like I said, compared to hibernation, the chipmunks do wake up from this at certain points uh, during this time, and then they'll go actually to their cache, obviously get some food, and then they'll go back into torpor. Torpor being another thing that obviously helps during cold or extreme conditions. If you take like the hummingbird, hummingbirds are obviously small little birds, which not much body mass, which means they can't hold that much heat in. So when nights are super cold for hummingbirds, these tiny things just pass out. They just go into torpor. They look half dead basically at night. But this allowed a body to survive that condition. So obviously, when the morning rises, they can heat themselves back up. Bees also do this as well during cold times. Uh, Bees are actually able to change the chemistry in their body, in their cells, to allow them to almost like an antifreeze that make sure that they make sure the moisture in their body doesn't become frozen. So that's a cool thing. We'll talk about hibernation and torpor and shit in another video. But the last thing I want to get on was actually chickadees. A few birds do cache as well. Chickadees, especially if you're from America, a very common bird you'll see outside. Um, you do see them at feeders a lot, and if you see them at feeders, you probably don't see them sit there and eat at feeders. A lot of times, chickadees are just grabbing things and leaving. That's because they're caching. Chickadees, just like squirrels, cache up to thousands of different seeds all over the place. But like different than squirrels though, chickadees ain't slow. Okay, chickadees can find they shit. Okay, they have a way better spatial memory compared to our furry squirrels. Okay, they have a spatial memory is most of the time believed to be used in chickadees for how they find their seeds, but also scientists believe it might be a little sense of survival of the fittest. Maybe the ones who have been eating really good during the winter time have been able to obviously reproduce more. So they thinking genetically the birds who have the better memories are the ones who are being able to reproduce and have more offspring. So, but yep, that's hoarding. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something new today. I'll see y'all in the next one.